Antique knitting patterns are going to seem a little bit weird to us because clothing items, names for things, and what was considered daily necessities are going to be different today than what they were 150 years ago. So for a little bit of fun, I decided to pull out my copies of Weldon's Practical Needlework, which were all published around the 1880s, 1890s, to see what kind of shocking, weird, interesting, or just plain fun patterns that we can look at that might be unusual to us today. The first broad category I want to start with is household items. Now, a few of these I've actually made myself, so if you find them interesting or entertaining and you want to see them live, feel free to check out those videos of mine. So for example, a coffee strainer, because why not make a reusable coffee strainer for yourself? I will say, unless you're using very, very fine yarn and a really small gauge, it doesn't strain coffee incredibly well. We also have an egg blanket. I know very recently we made some egg cozies, which are really cute as hats for my little boiled eggs in the morning. I just love the idea of having an entire blanket with pockets for my eggs. I've seen pocketed aprons for if you're collecting fresh eggs from your hens, and it kind of reminds me of that, but just like as a spread for your breakfast table, which is kind of fun. The next one I want to talk about though is the bell pull. As far as I can tell, this isn't meant for like the front doorbell, but for if you have servants in your home and you can ring a bell to summon them. This is a way to decoratively decorate, I guess, that particular bell pull, which is definitely different from most modern context, I would say. And the last time I think I've seen something like that was in Downton Abbey, where they pull on the bell pulls to summon people. Also, I'm realizing that I kind of have something like that on the back of my chair, but it's not for any purpose other than because I think it looks pretty. But these next category of items are called anti-macassars. Macassars. I don't really know how to pronounce this word, but basically in the Victorian era, a lot of men used macassar oil. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but they're using this oil in their hair in order to style it, and if they lean back against anything soft, it will stain and damage that fabric item or that item in general. So you create these covers for it so that you can take them off, wash them, or exchange them without damaging the furniture underneath. There's even like collars that have flaps on them to protect the back of the clothing from that as well. It also reminds me of a scene in Call the Midwife where they get someone's Brill cream, which is also like hair styling gel, I guess, maybe, or oil at the time, onto the wall because they're having a little bit of a romantic, intimate moment, and it becomes a really funny, like, running joke throughout that series. So it reminds me of that a little bit. So you're avoiding getting these hair oil stains on your chairs. Next, we have some baby items, and I don't mean, oh, cute, like, look at this little jacket or this little dress or something that you crochet, but things that today would make us go, what? You know, there are fancy hats. Baby bonnets can be very cute, but in my mind, if you're wearing one of these fancy hats as a baby, that is immediately going to be ripped off the head or tangled in something or somehow destroyed. I don't know. It just seems maybe not the most practical, which is kind of ironic considering that this is all called practical needlework. So this is what they consider practical. On the more maybe questionable side of things, we have a baby boa, which just seems like the best choking hazard. That just seems so dangerous to me. I don't know why you would put something loopy around a baby's neck. It just seems like you're asking for trouble on that one, so would not recommend recreating this one particularly. And then we have some children's toys. The ones that always make me kind of lift my eyebrows up, but maybe because I don't have the context of growing up with a horse and carriage, and that is baby reins and a baby whip, so that you can pretend play to be a horse, I guess, with your friends in the reins and whip them. I personally find amigurumi very, very cute. I've made a few items. I don't know if I have them around. Oh, here we go. Here's one that I made, like a little elephant. I love it so much, and I thought it was more of a modern thing, but it turns out that in many of these Victorian knitting manuals, there's a lot of knitted and crocheted animals, which I kind of maybe view as the early precursor to amigurumi. Some are more accurate looking than others, though. Let's just say that. We've got a toy lamb, which looks maybe a little sad. When I look at this toy lamb, I think, oh, that's had a rough day, maybe. We've got the toy elephant, which looks pretty good, also in crochet. We've got a cat, which again, I don't know why, maybe it's just the expression on the face, the way that it's looking down looks like it's had maybe a little bit of a tough day. A giraffe. I think the giraffe looks pretty good, really fun. I'd be curious to know if there's any like internal structure of this giraffe, or they're assuming that it'll stand up that long neck on its own. This could be a fun one for me to try to recreate, or maybe I can have an entire zoo of animals. I was pretty surprised to see that there there's, quite a collection of different toy animals that I could crochet myself. My little Victorian embroidery. Pin cushions and emery cushions were probably quite practical at the time. I think this definitely lives up to the name of being practical needlework. The first one is a strawberry emery cushion, which I love this one. It's so cute. If you don't know what an emery cushion is, it's basically a way to sharpen your needles. You can stick your needles in it repeatedly and it'll sharpen the ends of it. I've also heard of using that filling to use on antique steel beads where they can get rusty sometimes. So you can put them in the bag. I've actually seen it in Victorian manuals where you put it in a bag with the emery filling and you shake it around for a while to get the rust off. Not that I would recommend it now. I don't know how good of an idea that is to do with antiques, but I thought that was a fun fact. We've got a few fun other shapes for the pin cushions. We've got an acorn, one that looks like a basket. I really like the sunflower one. It just seems so happy to me, like sunny and happy and bright. And this one isn't technically a pin cushion, it's corn. It's meant to look like corn, but it's a bag. And I just love the idea of walking around with a bag that looks like corn. Like, what would you put into it? Why would you want a bag that looks like corn? But I kind of love it, and I would love to carry one around myself. And the final category is kind of like apparel adjacent things. So the first one that I think is fun and would be fantastic to have as an entire outfit is a boys matching outfit, from like the sweater to the pants to the socks to the hat. You are just head to toe in cabled knitwear. I actually started a project years ago now to make my own head to toe knitted outfit for cycling from the Victorian era. I got hung up a little bit because I ran out of a dye lot of my yarn. I have plans to resurrect that project though soon, so hopefully I can make my own matching set sometime soon from this particular era, because I think, I don't know, head to toe knitwear just seems so luxurious somehow, especially if it's all hand knit. There's also some that are a little bit more unusual maybe to us today. One of them is cycling tights. Specifically for women. It was unusual at this time, or it was like a time of transition for women to go into wearing pants, like bifurcated bottom wear versus skirts, and the athletic movement really drove it. So I think it's interesting that that kind of movement made itself all the way into knitwear. Also makes sense because, I mean, if you're bicycling, generally if I'm biking, I tend to dress a little bit warmer just because the wind speed makes me colder. So especially if you're biking in colder regions, it would probably be nice to wear nice warm tights. And they also specify in this tights that they are side closing so that you have like full coverage and modesty, because a lot of times, especially knit bottom wear, is split in the crotch. So I can see why they reassured their readers that the openings are at the sides and not at the crotch, basically. We've also got some men's swimwear. I think it's fascinating to see the absolute contrast of typical men's swimwear of this time to women's swimwear, especially because like even today, at least in the United States, like this pair of men's swimwear would be very similar to a Speedo and is not something that is commonly seen, at least where I'm from and where I've lived. There's also an item that I found that's called the sleeve holder, which I think is interesting because the description basically says that in recent years, the fashion has been to really tight sleeves, and what can get really annoying is if you're wearing an undersleeve and you put a jacket on top of it, is if your undersleeve gets all scrunched up in your jacket sleeve, which has happened to me before, even with modern clothing, and I find it really annoying. I find it interesting though that they made this a crochet pattern, because the basic idea of it is that you just have a length of string with 2 loops at the end. You loop one end around your finger, you wrap it tightly around your cuff, so it's like basically anchoring your cuff in place, put the other loop around your finger, and then you put that through the sleeve, so that basically creates like a really tight seal, like it's holding on to your undersleeve. You could easily just do this with string, but I guess maybe it's just fun to add the extra steps of crocheting it yourself, but that's a sleeve holder. Might be something that I actually make and use for myself for those times when I get really annoyed that my sleeves get scrunched up under my coat. We also have another really fun gentleman's garment. I don't know why this one in particular is for the gentlemen and not the ladies, and it's called the gentleman's socks with divided toe. And that's correct. It's basically an early toe sock, which, I mean, are they wearing flip-flops at this time where you need it? I think it's interesting because the description says, these socks are peculiar in having a separate compartment for the big toe, and to ensure this object they are knitted in such a way as to make the right and left foot correspond with the other. Something after the fashion of baby's bag gloves. They are comfortable to wear and are generally very well liked when one gets accustomed to them. Like, why? Why are you making this? I wish the descriptions of these items had a little bit more context as to why you would want to make this, and apparently it would be unusual for people at the time, but they say that it's very comfortable. I am I have so many questions about this one. And last but not least, one of my favorites, this is another one I've also knit myself, so you can see my video on me knitting it and then using it, which is an overboot to help you not slip. It's basically just a bag for your shoe that you put on over your boot, and it was highlighted as something that especially American women would make to wear over their boots in the wintertime to prevent them from slipping. I tried it out myself. The traction that you get is amazing. Like, it works really, really well. And the fascinating thing is, in that video that I published, there's people who actually put scientific studies underneath where they tried this out and putting socks, like modern day socks, over shoes, and it leads to a lot less slipping and falling in the wintertime. So this is actually something that is maybe a little unusual, maybe not that unusual because apparently modern day people do it too. It's just not something I've ever heard of, and I've lived in snowy, cold places for many, many years, but very practical. Like, if you don't want to slip in the wintertime, put some socks over your boots, especially if your boots don't have very good traction. Like, my Victorian boots really do not. So these overshoes were a lifesaver for me, or a fall saver for me, because I did fall on my butt quite a few times without wearing them. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this look into practical, maybe unpractical, fun, weird, odd, unusual, unique to us Victorian knits. Maybe you want to try some out yourself, like I have for quite a few of them. And a lot of them have been really fun to make, and some of them are also very useful. Actually quite practical. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe, especially if you like historical or vintage fiber crafts. I do a lot of knitting, I do a lot of sewing, crocheting, weaving, all sorts of things. Thank you again, and I'll see you again really, really soon. Bye.